tonight we are joined by Brandon Lozdoski. So, Brandon, what year? Just tell anybody who's listening or watching, what year did you wrestle at Harlem?
So I was at Harlem 2000 to 2004. That's when I graduated.
And Marty and Dan were both coaching at that point, right?
That's right. That's right.
And you graduated, and then you wrestled at Northwestern, and you graduated from Northwestern.
2008, correct.
All right. So what are you up to now? We've been talking the last couple of weeks about some wrestling stuff. Where are you at these days?
So right now I'm in actually southern Mississippi, Hattiesburg. Ended up here. It's 2 years this month. Kind of transitioned down here. Had an opportunity present itself where I've been in automotive. I was living in Detroit, Michigan for the past decade. Enjoyed it. Loved Detroit. My wife really wanted to experience the South a little bit. Family friend said, "Hey, I have a position in Southern Alabama. We'd like for you guys to explore." And I'm working for Georgia Pacific. And I've been in purchasing, I've been in buying, I've been in commodity management. And so she wanted me to come out to look at a lumber mill, lumber and plywood, and run the purchasing division. And so we said, well, sure, we'll come down for an exploration visit while we're down here. Another position for Georgia Pacific opened in Mississippi, and we kind of traveled over from Alabama into Mississippi, and ended up visiting Hattiesburg. It was like a close city where we stayed the night, and we said, okay, I think we can do this.
You guys ever been to Hattiesburg?
I've never been to Mississippi.
No. Well,
probably couldn't even picture it on a map, to be honest, but you know what's crazy about the whole thing is that my grandma was born here. I just realized it. Like, just found out my grandma was born in Camp Shelby. There's a huge military camp down here called Camp Shelby. And we've been here 2 years, and somebody reached out and said, "Do you know your grandma, my dad's mom, was born here?"
Pretty cool.
It is.
Like, no one else in the family told you that?
You know what? McNames, my family, they probably don't even know that, my uncles. So no, nobody had ever told me that. And so really, we're down here. There's University of Southern Mississippi. That's where Brett Favre went. That's kind of what they're known for a little bit, right? And it wasn't until I got here that I learned they have no wrestling. I like to find wrestling programs, get engaged. I have a son who turned 7. My daughter just turned 9. So I said, let me find a program and let me see how I can help and get involved, right? Bring a little bit of experience. And there was nothing around. I just couldn't believe it. But at the same time, I had found there is what you call the Mississippi Wrestling Foundation. And they started wrestling down here about 2 years ago. It's a bunch of Northerners that have come down here. Now they live here a little bit. And some guys from Ohio, some people from Indiana, some people from a little bit just up north. And so, man, they started probably the same time we moved here in 2021. There's maybe 9 schools. We moved up to 18 or so last year, and we've added a couple more. So I'm a part of Oak Grove High School. It's the 5th largest school in the state, about 1,900 kids. And fate just kind of brought us together. There's kids there that wanted to wrestle. They've been trying to get a wrestling program going for a while. A couple dads and other people that have wrestled and traveled the world, because the military's down here. So you got a lot of people that pass through the military, and they've experienced wrestling in another state. Somewhere, yeah. Some of them have experienced it overseas a little bit, right? So they try to get programs going. It just hasn't clicked. And then it took a Brandon Lozdoski to come down here and say, and I'm pretty persistent. So I got approached by a neighbor owns a local jiu-jitsu, or he actually owns a gym. He connected me with a jiu-jitsu guy who owns a gym. And that's who they kind of contacted first, saying, "Hey, you want to coach wrestling?" He said, "I don't know anything about it, but I know somebody," and got me involved. And so I took off work. I showed up at the AD's office, and I said, "How do we do this?" And that was in June, actually. Been a lot of work. It took, Marty, were you guys involved? No, you, McNames, you guys, that program were going, right?
Yeah.
So there's, like, when did those start?
NIC started their original, when they first started wrestling, was 1958.
1958. Incredible.
Yeah, I would have to look back, but Belvedere, probably when they opened the doors, they probably started,
Yeah.
wrestling. I mean, it's, yeah,
Nature, right?
Yeah.
1958. So how many schools were there at that point?
And actually, Hattiesburg was in the Shark Conference, so there were like North Boone and all those schools, and I don't even know how many of those schools had wrestling back then. We didn't get into the NIC-10 until in the 90s, early 90s. Yeah, maybe no, I'm sorry, like 83, I think, is when they got into the NIC-10 conference.
And probably then most of the schools didn't even have wrestling, right? I would assume some of those schools didn't even have it, like Jefferson, or maybe they
No,
did. They were good back
No, they had it. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I got a friend that I went to college with that wrestled at Jefferson in the 80s.
Yeah.
So it's been
I actually what was it, 1995? Yeah, before 95, you'd be surprised on how much success Jefferson had.
Yeah, I take that back. That's why I immediately took it back. I think,
Yeah.
Draheim was over from one of those other schools and everything else too. He wasn't like,
Yeah.
yeah. He was an East guy.
Yes. Well, yeah. So it is interesting that, most places have some sort of wrestling program, even if it's non-existent or not very popular.
Yeah.
At least it's been going
Right.
where they have coaches and a schedule and, all this type of stuff. You're starting from before scratch. It's not even a funded program. So you're trying to kind of fund it now yourself.
so
right?
yeah, I guess prior to 2021, there's one program, actually maybe two. Mississippi School of the Deaf and Blind had a program. And then Ocean Springs, which is on the Gulf side, they had a program that they just ran independently. I think they wrestled in like Louisiana, probably there. Alabama just picked up recently. So I did have to start from scratch, Dalton. That's right. So really, it's not funded. I got there in August. It's when it finally got approved, was in August. AD just looked at me and said, I have no money for you. No money for you, no money for your program. Every sports team is funded themselves. So at that point, I had to start putting that together, right? How do you even do that? That's the learning curve, is where do you start? Don't know what a good fundraiser is, don't know where to turn. You start asking parents, you start trying to get involved as much as you can. But I didn't even meet my team really. We had like a week of trials. So I basically hosted like an open interest meeting in August at that point. But I couldn't start fundraising because you don't know who's going to be on the team or not. Those kids just show up. Then we had a trial week where kids could come out and learn if they wanted to do it. But at that point, I still couldn't really fundraise because who's on your team until they start signing up. So right now we got some initiatives kind of going. And what I've learned is you kind of just got to submit a fundraiser to the school, and you can run that for a couple weeks, and the next one you can run for a couple weeks and weeks at a time, and just start grinding at it. I've taken the initiative. I go to every business I can try to stop in. I could try to get sponsorships.
I'm guessing you guys have a football team.
Man, football team's great. So like they are ranked #1 in the state. They just
Okay.
lost recently to a school called Brandon. But they're still one of the top programs, so they raise money all the time. But what is interesting, it was challenging, is it's like nobody kind of just stepped out and said, I'm going to help you do this. It's like you had to like ask these questions in order to like learn anything, instead of here's the playbook on how you do a program.
Right.
But yes, we do.
I'm sorry, not to cut you off, but have you had conversations with football coaching staff? Are they on board with you starting a program? Are they against it?
They big wrestling people, or
So, when I saw him the first time I met him, he was really excited about it, right? The coach said, hey, I'm going to give you all my linemen, try to get some guys out. And I said, that's great, but I'll take all of them, really, right? I don't need just your linemen, I need your team.
All right.
You try to, they're just not familiar. It's baseball and football. So they don't understand quite yet what the impact of wrestling can have on other sports. And so we're trying to teach them that. There is another coach at like the littler leagues that played in the pros a little bit, and he was pumped. He's like, this is great, and I think you're doing what's right.
Yeah.
And so I'm really trying to actually understand how I can navigate that. I haven't been on social media in probably 5+ years, really, right? The first thing I posted was about this program. And then I posted a fundraiser out there And I've actually really enjoyed engaging with people. I'm surprised the amount of support. But I really would like to try to get in touch with some of the, how do you reach professionals, right? That's thinking big, but how do you get somebody to talk to these coaches to help them understand the importance of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people are trying to make initiatives and stuff, and naturally, social media is kind of telling people to do it. Whether it's like former, wrestlers having some sort of video, or whether it's Joe Rogan, things are happening a lot faster today than they were ever happening in the past. So, the fact that a lot of those high school coaches maybe are unfamiliar, it's not really that hard for them to become familiar.
Yeah.
So I think the hard part is coaches are always going to be wanting control over their athletes, I guess. At least most of them seem to be. And so then they're always going to try to prevent some high school potential from getting injured or whatever. So you never know which person is going to be cautious or thinking that it's more of a risk than a reward. But just it doesn't actually matter with the coach, to be honest. I think the more that you coach and do your thing, I think the kids will eventually come. I think naturally there's so much more adolescents familiar with martial arts and wrestling in particular. So I think there's like a big wave that's going to come soon. So
Well,
yeah,
and that's a good point too. And I guess here's the thing is like, I give the benefit of the doubt to the coach, right? He's in the middle of season. What's his focus? It's not,
Right.
how can I help this wrestling team, right? He's trying to win a state title. That's his main goal, and they're in a position to do that. So I don't fault him for that, right? I saw him this last weekend. I said hi to him. And I'll approach him again once the season ends at an appropriate time and try to piggyback off our initial conversation, right? And
Yeah.
I'll see what my teammate has, what we're at, and try to fill in some holes and plug some stuff. But I think we got kind of a full lineup. But try to say, hey, maybe you can give me those guys for a week. I'm going to give them a week. Let them come try out. Let's encourage it. Let's see what happens. But I think it's just timing at this point, right? And I think my job is also to just keep being me, showing up, talking to these youth, driving energy, trying to host as much stuff as I can. And that's where I've really hit home to this Mississippi. So, okay, what is it, like IHSA? Here it's the MHSAA. We're not even sponsored by them yet. We're not big enough. So we're growing into that point. So we're still kind of under this Mississippi Wrestling Foundation. And I did at least convince the board. I went to them early on. I said, look, you guys want to grow the sport, but the way you have a handbook written right now, it's very limiting. It's kind of like you have 18 teams and you have it in the rules that whoever won last year the state tournament gets to host the state tournament. And if they say no, it goes to second place. And if they say no, it goes to third place. And third place, and it goes down the chain. And it's like,
Right.
who wants to go into middle Mississippi? How is that drawing interest in the sport, right? Where I'm in one of the largest cities in the state, I can draw in all these neighboring schools. Like the closest one I compete with is like 90 miles away. So we're driving constantly. I got an hour and a half drive to get to anything. So you bring me to this big city, and I have some of the large schools around us. Let's draw interest, right? So I think by putting on good events, drawing interest, I'm trying to learn how to get that marketing out. I'm going to, and that would draw the athletes at the school into it. Wow, look at what wrestling has going on. Look at that cool event they hosted on. How do I get the spotlight so they can wrestle in the dark and, have a little spotlight? How do I get a little raised platform? And then you get the mixed martial arts, like you're saying, Dalton. You got a lot of people that do jiu-jitsu around here. I'm converting them a little bit.
Yeah, it would be interesting.
Have a good plan of like what you need to do. Do you have the help to do it down there?
No, that's the problem. Is I got to I take like half days off of work, so that's like where I take my vacation. So I'm like, it's hard because I'm the only one that can set certain stuff up. Like even collecting money is challenging because I have to personally take the money and turn it in. Like you can't just go and show up to the bookkeeper and say, I'm paying my wrestling fee. Here you go. There's challenges all over, right? So you actually have to set a higher fee because you have no money. So you got to buy singlets. You got to buy uniforms. Belvedere and Hononegah and any of the schools, you guys got loads of those things. You don't have to
Yeah.
buy it no more. You probably have multiple mats, right?
Got a few, yeah.
Yeah.
I got one with like gum stuck on it that we're borrowing to each other as new programs, and it's great, but it says like Virginia on it, and it's blue and orange, and I got to give it back. So it's either so it's challenging in that way. I wish and I have some other coaches trying to help, but one's in the military, they're part time.
Is there anyone in the building that's interested in coaching or have interested in just helping out? I mean, they don't necessarily have to know wrestling, be a coach. They can just be that body in the building to help coordinate and get kids where they need to be. And
A little bit, maybe.
I guarantee there's someone.
Well,
and at some point you like it could be, you know, a hall monitor. I mean,
Yeah.
anybody.
we do have a
anybody.
friend in there. We have a friend that we've met.
Because it just any type of connection to being able to run to the athletic office and talk to somebody for you, or you know, whatever you need to coordinate.
Assistant freshman football coach that, you know, all he does is get the footballs. Hey,
and I would challenge him if I were you. You should challenge him to some competition because you'll beat him, and you know, to a foot race or something. You know,
I don't know, you know, like, maybe. I mean, I feel like I could be fast. I feel like if I had to be fast, I'll be fast.
When's your season start?
But so backing up, I do have a teacher, and I'd like to give her acknowledgement.
Okay.
We do have a friend that we've met here, Carly, met through book club, and she's great. And her husband's actually a professor at the university here, and we've really clicked with them. Actually, I went trail riding with him twice on his bikes. That's cool, kind of. I thought, why would I want to go over a bunch of stumps, man? That's just like a trip hazard, right? But with the right gear, you can kind of move over them. So she is actually, I asked the bookkeeper and I said, hey, look, it's unrealistic for me to take off work to get there. Can she help? Can I give her the money? I'll send you these receipts. I'll photocopy everything. And season just started. We started last Monday.
Okay.
So I've had a week now.
Do you guys find it interesting at all? Like just thinking the fact that it's, you know, it's just a different experience because of, like it's just a different coaching experience. I think that's fascinating because of where that program is in geography in the country, and then obviously in age of development of a wrestling program itself.
Well, it's just kind of mind blowing. Just like I've never known anything but wrestling. You know, growing up here in Midwest, like to go where you're at and down there they don't even know what it is. It just kind of, you know, it would be like mind blowing to me. Like, what do you mean you've never seen it? You know?
Yeah. Well, luckily, I do think like I wonder what the percentage is of people who are unfamiliar. Like, you know, you'd take like some study of like, you know, from a level of 1 to 10, you know, how familiar are you with the amateur wrestling? It's like I feel like a lot of people would know more today. So it is there is like an opportunity that you the cool thing that I think the cool opportunity I think you have is if you're successful, you'll get to skip some of the you know, the baggage that comes with having a program for 20 years or whatever, you know. Because there's always the way that things have gone or the way that things have been before, and now you don't actually have that. There's nothing before.
And I'm gonna throw him under the bus, but I think this is where Marty fits in perfect because, no offense, when he took over at Hononegah, I mean, did you score a point the first couple of years or the first year at conference, Marty?
Well, no.
So I mean, you took over a program. How many kids were in the program when you took over?
Well, there was 15.
So
my first year we had about 40, and then by the end of the year we had like about 15. But yeah, I mean, I remember Perry Giardini wanted to give me a point at conference to make me feel good for myself, and I said I don't need a point. Someday I'll win the conference.
I mean,
did that? How many times you win that?
A lot.
10.
A lot.
I don't know. I never.
Yeah.
I don't know. We won her quite a bit. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you went through something like that.
But it was during the heyday, Brandon. There
Yeah.
was great wrestling in the conference
Yeah.
when you
Well,
guys were there.
Yeah, let's go back in there. I wanted to give Brandon an opportunity to talk about what he's up to now. I am also going to help attach his a link to his fundraiser. So anybody from the area that knows Brandon and wants to help Brandon, you can find it somewhere attached to this podcast. But yeah, let's go back in the past. You guys were coaching when Brandon was in high school, and I've trained with Brandon a lot when I was in high school. He was like my older brother, showing me the ropes. Yeah, what is one thing you guys remember from when he wrestled?
Tough kid.
I was just gonna say, very tough nose, man. When he went out there, he was fun to watch because he combined both, a lot of talent, was a lot of tenacity and toughness. You know, it's not a pretty sport, and he might be a pretty guy, but he wasn't very pretty during wrestling season. He wasn't afraid to mix it up there. I think it was I remember, was it your junior year or was your senior year, sprained your ankle downstate pretty bad?
Yeah, junior.
Junior year, right after and you're getting ready, either you just beat the kid from Grand or had to wrestle him, maybe in the quarterfinals.
I had to wrestle. Well, no, that was a couple years you're mixing there. I had to wrestle him in the wrestlebacks. I did wrestle Matt in the wrestlebacks there, but
I just
yeah.
remember you being up in the stands, and that ankle was not very pretty, and I was taping it up for you. And when you were limping away, I was like, man, that's too bad. He's going to come up short, but right there showed his toughness. Ended up winning in.
It's probably one of the worst memories. Just knowing that you're there, right? You're in the quarterfinals. You got the match won. You stand up, and I recall just hearing the loudest snap.
Yeah.
I just looked at Coach Strahan and said, I can't look down. I think I definitely just broke my leg. I definitely just broke my ankle. I'm not looking down. It was that loud. We both just stopped wrestling. I didn't want to look down.
Yeah.
And I think I'd rather have broke it. That bothered me for months and months.
And to be clear, that was was that the year that you didn't place?
I did
What year
place.
did you?
I lost all the way back to 6th. I should just
Okay.
hindsight just said he's
junior
on,
year.
right? I could have went on
So-
the semis, made an appearance, and just taken the loss like I did, but I should just at that point just said I'm done. I think actually I was pretty cruel to the guy for 5th and 6th. I just choked him. It was terrible. I think I almost got ejected. He's like, if you touch his neck again, you're gone. I just grabbed that man's. I was trying to take his throat out, and I was just so mad. It was wrong of me. He didn't deserve that.
Well, I mean,
Shouldn't have beat me either, though. So whatever.
Yeah, I mean, having that injury at that time
Yeah.
always messes with you as to how you respond to it. But
Yeah.
yeah, Marty, what do you remember from Brandon's era? You said it was the heyday, and obviously, I've done the stats. It was definitely one of the best years of the conference.
Yeah, he was just a kid that was in your face. He was he would nonstop. So some kids are just like total just technicians. He was everything. He had great technique. He was tough. He was mean. He knew how to score on the edge of the mat. He was just a tough wrestler. And a great person too.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. I would say,
because you know what, looking back, and I watch these guys, these days, and don't get me wrong, like the Super 32s, they're at a different level. Like the Mike Puetas and stuff, they were at different levels, right? And
Sort of.
yeah, but I just never thought of myself as it. Now I look back and I'm like, I don't even know what I was doing. I don't even know if I had technique. Like I really think, how did I even do it? And I think I just think of myself as just a goer. I just went, and I think I just had athleticism. And but I guess there was some technique in there somewhere. But it was a good time to wrestle in the conference. I mean, it was fun to wrestle Belvedere. It was fun to wrestle Hattiesburg. It was fun to wrestle East. Like it was going to be crazy. you just didn't know what was like who was going to win it. It was some of the best duels I remember ever watching and being a part of. And I mean, gosh, some of those weight classes were just loaded at the time.
Hmm.
Like 3-4 of the best kids in the whole state in one weight in one conference, and you were just thinking who's not even going to make it to state. You know, with a Miller and a Swanson and
Neely.
Neely.
Yeah.
it was just
And
free. Like, and there's Grant, just Miller just doing his thing, young dude just destroying people, and he was so good and so talented.
yeah, what do you think was just looking back on your own experience, like what do you think one of the things was, what was the thing that made it so competitive in that time period?
I could be wrong, but really I think it's just because we also grew up in some really good kids programs at that time. Like we had consistency and good kids programs that were like um, solid, you know, like consistent, steady. They were known. They're the staples. You had Belvedere kids wrestling program. You've had Hattiesburg and you had the Harlem Cougars, but really well run, organized well from the same coaching standpoint. Nowadays, I feel like there's a lot of changes going on all the time, and the coaching staff can flip over and things can change over. Where we grew up in a really good kids program. I mean, we won state in the Harlem Cougars when I was there. That was just a
Yeah.
great team. Uh, and I feel like it was one of the best teams even when I was a freshman in high school. I feel like our team could have competed with the best in the state had Kel not got, you know, kicked out, and a couple other kids just ended up melting down a little bit. And at the end of the season when we knew Cal was gone and things happened, but that same team was what came up together in high school. And so been doing it since they're young.
Yeah. Well, it definitely was a lot more, I think, stable. Like you said, it's consistency with the kids program was there. And I think, honestly, I look back at like when it was run by a lot of parents that weren't connected to the wrestling world the same way that they are today, right? So back then, the parents that ran the programs were kind of just parents dropping their kids off, I guess. And I think since wrestling has become connected to the internet and people have become, I don't know, I want to say fandom of wrestling has grown. There's been a lot of like chaos that goes into youth developmental wrestling, whether it's like what moves you teach, right? Like there's people that aren't very good at wrestling that teach certain moves that are maybe effective at, you know, a very young level, but it's not going to benefit the kids long term for just fundamentals and stuff. And so, yeah, I would agree that there was so much more stability and it produced more consistent high school athletes that could compete. I genuinely think that the reason why a lot of high school kids that have potential in our area quit is because they're not good enough to actually compete with a lot of good kids, and therefore then they kind of get you know, I guess demoralized or whatever. They just decide to quit. Whereas like you were mentioning, Brandon, like, you know, Mike Poetas of the world, but you competed with all of those guys, right? And you didn't come from the same pedigree as the sense of like club coach traveling around. You weren't in the same, I guess, similar ecosystem, but you competed with them. And so I think if you have, you know, fundamentals down, you can go compete with a lot of, you know, high level people, and then you can see that it's possible. But yeah, there's definitely. So do you know the lifetime, you know, the average career length of a high school wrestling coach, a program tenure?
Oh, I'd probably say less than 5 years.
It's 3 years. And again, I've talked to Marty and Dan about this because they're the two individuals that have, you know, they've been coaching at the same school since they've been teaching, you know, so they have the longest tenure, but the average is actually 3 years. And so it's really hard to replicate that steadiness because, like you said, you know, you have to take vacation for your real job, the one that provides the lifestyle and the home that you have, right? And then how what's the word that I'm trying to say? How long can you endure that, right? Like before it becomes like, oh, like that's a hard thing to do. Coaching is very draining from that standpoint.
Yeah. And we had stable. I mean, you knew growing up when you went into the Harlem wrestling program, it was the same things. Like you started in the lunchroom downstairs, and you probably started with like a Sam Inderly. You started with the same coaches, and you had to work until you got elevated to go upstairs, which was like super hot, and it was the senior level kids, and you just worked up, and those coaches were there, and you had that program for a long time, and it is hard. And now I think also too, people nowadays can. I don't know, get a chip on their shoulder and they split off and they divide. And now you have, instead of one Hattiesburg, you have two Hattiesburg teams because you can't get along for a quick second, right? So that just divides it. And by having such good wrestlers back in, they competed at elite levels at young ages, so they brought back good technique. And that helped us a lot. So I think we were learning pretty good stuff at that time. Credit to our coaches for that.
I think looking back when you guys were kids club, the people coaching were coaching for the right reasons.
Yes.
For the sport of wrestling. They weren't there, hey, this is my son Brandon, he's really good, I'm going to coach him.
Yeah.
I'm only going to worry about him, and maybe I'll make a couple practices, but when I show up Sunday, I'm in his corner, no one else. I'm his coach type of deal. Where I think you get that now. Back then, some of those parents, didn't want to coach their own kid.
Well, you guys have kids in the program.
Yeah, and some of those guys that stuck around didn't have any kids. They did it because they liked the sport of wrestling and wanted to see those kids be successful and move on. I mean, at least when I first started at Belvedere, it was that way. There, the Case family,
Yeah.
You go back, Kenny Case started it all. He's probably the reason Belvedere wrestling is what it was and is. It goes back to him. He got kids out, and he did it because he loved wrestling. He wanted to see kids be successful. When Marty, I'm sure you found the right people to get associated with your kids club.
Dick Schrader and John Finnicle. They ran the show.
You had good helpers.
People
that were willing to help.
Great.
I think what I think is interesting. It's hard. Coaching is just getting people willing to help in the facility in the way in which you need them to help. Sometimes people want to help their way as opposed to having them help the way that you need them to help you. So if you can find that, then that'll be great. People that say, where you need me, Brandon, you'll have success.
And I have actually, like right now, practice is going on, right? So I ran up there beforehand, told the kids this is what I got to go do. And one of the dads, so one of my assistants was supposed to run practice, and he does MMA locally, so he had to go to his gym. Text me last minute, I can't make it. The other coach couldn't make it either, and I'm like, called a couple of dads. I'm like, can you just be there? And one of them, he's like, I can be there. And he actually planned to be there today too, and he's going to help out any way he can. So we're building. It just takes a while, right? You got to get around each other to start filling that out. And when you're not in the school and everybody's working separate jobs and everything, it'll come together. It has to. It will. And it is. It is. We have a schedule. We're going to compete. We got a duel coming up this weekend, and I think I got to get on Amazon after this and get a couple singlets.
Oh, yeah.
I got to ask the other coaches, like, do you guys have a couple that we could just borrow? Because, or can you accept shorts for this weekend, shorts and shirts, or what? Like, that's where we're at. I just don't even have a singlet on this weekend. Some of them I told today, like, dude, you got to get shoes. Like, have some shoes. Can't be in socks this weekend, I don't think. So I want to get some shoes.
Yeah. Got to get some shoes.
Yeah.
Well, Marty, you got anything?
No, I'm totally impressed with you, Brandon.
Hey, I appreciate it.
Unbelievable. I mean, keep it going.
Yeah.
I mean, it takes someone like you to do that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys, and I appreciate everything you guys are doing and having this podcast and letting me come on and speak and you know speak about Mississippi wrestling. I guess it's new for me. I just tune in, man. I think it's coming,
Yeah.
right? Like you see good kids coming out of these other states. I'm excited to see what happens, and I think I'm just getting involved. And I've raised my hand. I said, I'm at your I'm at your mercy. Whatever you guys need me for, Mississippi wrestling, I'm here. I even reached out to my college coach. I haven't talked to that man and Coach Timmy Sizeski, and geez, you know, he probably thought I was calling him to get me out of jail or something, but I wasn't. And so I'm like, Timmy, it's Brandon. I'm just calling you for some advice. And I reached out. I saw Brandon Preeson, right? Dalton, you know that guy.
Yeah, I know who he is.
Well, back on social media, I saw that he's at one of the colleges, right? And I'm like, Brandon, I need to pick your brain. Listen, how do I get college coaches to come watch us? I'm not telling you the talent's there right now.
Well, I guess
Drawing interest, stuff like that. So thank you guys, and thank you.
yeah. Well, I mean, I wanted to bring you on to kind of catch up with the Harlem people that have probably not talked to you or seen you in a while. So
Yeah, man.
you know, last couple of weeks we've had Harlem, we've had Jacob Messink on, who's the current head coach at Harlem.
Awesome.
Then we had Chad Vandiver on, caught up with him, see what he was up to these days. And yeah, I think who else is, I think I have somebody else. Well, I have Fernie, he's a former Hananiga wrestler. So just having past NIC-10 conference wrestlers on, just talk about, you know, the good old days and what they're up to now, I guess.
Marty owns the only victory over me in conference there. A little Brett Cranky one day got me.
He beat you?
He done.
Dude, I
He
had
didn't.
mono. I didn't even know it.
Yeah, I kicked him off the team his senior year.
I know, that was a rough team. That was good. Those kids are rowdy.
They were tough. That was a bunch of just tough kids.
They were tough. So when we went, they were bound to get down with you. It was fun. But yeah, Brett at Harvard. I didn't know I had mono. I just felt terrible. Didn't know it. I wrestled half the season. That was my sophomore year. Half the season with mono. The only reason I found out is because I missed too many days of school, and I had to get a doctor's note. So I just looked at my mom. I was like, I don't know. I don't feel good. So maybe I'm gonna go tell him I got mono. Yeah, I went to the doctor. He tested me and it came back positive. I was like, I was like, I couldn't be so shocked. I was like, dude, I could have died. But Brett Cranky, he was did
Well,
he walk
you
home?
know,
I'm sorry to keep you guys, but did he walk home from that duel one? Who walked home from Harlem one day? Didn't
Well, Jim Palm, my assistant coach at the conference, he got kicked out of the tournament and walked home.
Yeah.
Brett Cranky I would not let him on the bus, but I knew his parents and they gave him a ride home. I kicked him
Okay.
off the team.
so that was just I think that was a rumor.
He was a very talented kid that just didn't like authority.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what was I about to say? Brandon, you're just talking about your just high school a little bit. Like obviously, you were one of 4 individuals who placed at the high school state tournament as a freshman. So that's one of the things that you said that's the only win that the only loss that you gave up in the conference was to Hananiga.
Yeah,
That was the only one.
that was the only one. Shouldn't have.
Yep, you're a 4-time conference champ.
That's correct.
Yeah. So
I think I was actually, if I look back, and I'll give myself credit for that, but I mean, to place at 130 as a freshman is tough.
Oh yeah.
You look at the brackets above me, there's maybe one other freshman in the state that even placed that year. And
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the other placers, they were all from the lightweights. So
hey,
I'll give you that. I'll give you that.
I
You're
gotta
the
give you
heaviest.
dollars
You're the
for
heaviest
man.
freshman champ.
That's it, Fat Boy champ. No, I don't know who's out there now. I'm sure Hananiga will come up with someone bigger. You guys,
Well, this year,
got a
Brody
couple
Sindel is coming in as a freshman, and he's about 150. Right? Is he going 55? Somewhere around
57.
there.
57.
But he's good. He's very good, and he could do it.
What's
and
Brad
that's in-
Sindell's son?
yeah. Brad was on our team. Loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's, you know what? He's a big part of the kids club at
Speaking
Hattiesburg
of
right now.
walking,
He's done a good job.
Yeah. He's
didn't
great.
Sundell walk home from Hananiga or something one year in the conference tournament?
He might have too. There's some walking home back then.
Yeah,
Boss,
there was a lot.
boss,
See,
you were walking
guy.
home.
Yeah. This is for anybody who's listening, any of the parents or any athletes,
how
you know,
competitive.
hey, back then, if you lost, you walked home.
Walked
Hey,
home.
just
And
there
it
was
was snow. It was winter because we
Yeah.
are a winter sport down here. It's
Yeah.
summer. Oh,
they
yeah.
had
Uh,
there was a time that East had a heavyweight. He was an African American kid. He qualified for state and then broke his ankle at state. But at conference, he got beat. They couldn't find him. He had climbed the fence and was sitting on the 50-yard line at Hananiga, the football field. That's where they found him.
Oh,
I mean, it was good stuff back then.
he was mad. He had to go take a break, climb a
Yeah.
fence, break in the stadium.
Yeah.
he
Yeah,
was
yeah.
he was
He placed in
meditating on the
state.
50-yard line.
He placed in state and didn't win the conference.
Hmm.
Uh,
Was there weight limits back then?
no, it wasn't that long. I mean, it was right when you were right about when you were there, I think.
Yeah, it had to be right before, because that was around 98, wasn't it, that kid? Was it Ferguson or something like
Yeah,
that?
Bruce Ferguson.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think
Yep.
it was just before these guys.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sorry, I don't like last question. So you guys do see a lot of the football players on the teams, right? Still?
On
Yeah.
wrestling teams?
Yeah, they seem to work together still pretty well, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean,
You got to
McGaines,
tap
what do
into
you-
that.
when you say yeah, well, I mean, Belvedere's not a good example because their football team's very small.
Yeah.
And so it's not really, but as of North, when I was at North, I mean,
You don't get
10
a
kids, less than
big,
10 kids were.
big push from them, but they get some of their bigger guys. Again, they look for their linemen to try to get out.
But to be honest,
It's
almost
not
every
a great percentage.
Yeah.
Per se, not as good as it should be. We'll put it that way for sure. I mean,
Yeah, you know what I'm gonna start doing, guys? This is actually funny. Recently, speaking of Hattiesburg, Mississippi,
Oak Grove High
recently,
School, baby. Oak Grove.
Brett Favre has been on some videos talking about concussions and how in reality no high school or youth level athlete should actually play football. And obviously he can be easily looked at as maybe just somebody making noise, but he's a great example of somebody who's gotten hit a lot. So I'm just going to keep sharing good old Brett Favre telling people not to wrestle or not to play football. Sorry. And maybe change the sport that most males are attracted to. I don't understand how it's not. I mean, every football player wants, you know, the MMA explosion. I don't understand how it hasn't fully kind of changed the way that like high schools perceive the most popular sport, right? Like football right now is still kind of like fancy, if you will, right? Where people want to be on the football team for Friday night lights and stuff. But I guess that's the only reason, right? Like Friday night football is like what is exciting because they don't, I mean, you know, I don't know. Football players don't go national tournaments and they're not really all in it. I don't know. I'm just interested. I don't know what is holding because is it true that less people are playing football in just average? Like, are less kids getting involved in football because of potential
Concussions?
fears of concussions and stuff?
no clue. But
No?
it's easy to be tough in football. You
Football's
got
easy, though.
you got
It's
10 other guys around you that, you know,
it's fun.
it's hard to be tough in wrestling because it's one-on-one, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that hard. That was
Well,
pretty tough.
It's hard for guys who can't handle, you know. In
Yeah, maybe
football,
they're
you
not
can
tough.
walk around. I'm the baddest man in the world on the line, you
Grew up
know.
hard. I grew up humble beginnings, so wrestling was easy to me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, I don't know. Why do you ask Brandon about the football? You're just curious?
I just was curious, you know. I really do want to try to attract some of the other sports here, right? And just
again,
Want to
I
validate what I thought was still valid and true, right? I mean, you watch NFL, I like football, and I don't know who else does, but there's Micah Parsons out there that just loves wrestling.
yeah.
He can't get enough of it, and it's like, how do they not see this? They see him, obviously, they watch it. So I'm hoping that naturally somebody would think about it, or the coaches can
Yeah.
think about it. And
I guess the hard part is to think about Micah Parsons or think about any elite wrestler. You know, one of the things is trying to create for the masses, right? Like, so, you know, out of the 100 athletes that play football, how many are really just that like have the tenacity and athleticism and hunger to go to the highest levels of football, right? That kid probably will find wrestling because that will make them better. But if you're just a average football player and you don't have aspirational desires to go to the elite level, why would you ever wrestle? It's the hardest thing you're ever going to do. And all you wanted to do was be on a football team. So I think the hard part is, even if Micah Parsons or, you know, Stephen Neal or Brock Lesnar, even if all these people exist and say, hey, you should wrestle because it makes you better at football or whatever. Yeah, the ones that are super, you know, competitive, I think would find it, but
yeah,
the
I'm proud
other
of my
ones are.
girls, because like wrestling's tough, man. How does a girl decide I'm gonna go do that?
Yeah.
And do it, and then they just keep coming back and they love it, and it's like,
Yeah,
it's tough.
once you do
But,
wrestle,
like,
yeah,
they show up. I mean, I had a seventh grader. She just showed up. Hadn't seen her ever, right? And there she was, and I'm like, damn, she's in it.
yeah. Well, that's also why you have to create consistency just in general with showing up, because you're going to have a lot of athletes that come and then go, right? Like, you're going to have people that come into your life as a coach, and then you're going to say, oh, wrestling's not for you anymore. And you jump out, and then somebody jumps in, and maybe they jump in and jump out and then back in, right? Like, you never really know how it goes, but just having the consistency of something, allowing people to show up. I think there should be a wrestling gym in every high school. It makes the most sense if you really knew what it was.
The kids that
It's
lose should walk home. That should just be the way it is.
Get taken down in practice, start walking.
Yeah, tell your athletic.
Take a walk. Take a walk.
Probably
tell
a
your
little
athletic
easier to walk
director.
home in
Take
Mississippi.
those shoes off and take a walk. Go
Yeah.
ahead. Don't wear that. Go ahead. Well,
Yeah.
Hey,
Well,
we gotta get you
go ahead.
back on like a month from now or so and see how things are progressing, right?
that'd be cool. I
I'd like to-
appreciate it.
I'd
And
love to.
offline, and off of line, offline, I would love your guys' feedback. How do I do something? Any advice, suggestions? You guys have done this stuff, and I thank you guys for it. You guys are the OGs of it, and I need that. I'm not there yet, right? I'm learning. So there's tricks and there's things you guys know. Of course, please. I mean, somehow I'll get your information and share, right? Or if you're willing to, I'd love it if I could pick your brain sometime outside of it and say, hey, what do you think about this? How did you approach this situation? Because would love that, right?
You get my number from Dalton. I'll talk to you anytime.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
same.
Yeah.
Yep,
And now look
about
at
it.
this. Dalton, shout out. Wait.
Yeah. School of wrestling.
See that? It says the baby school of wrestling.
Do they fit?
They fit great. They fit
That's
great.
great.
Make
Yeah,
it
they're
look good. Make it look
yeah, they're great sweats.
Yeah, they are. I was like, dang, Dalton, you did got the A1, man. You didn't.
Well,
You act like you're
Yeah.
surprised, like Dalton, can I handle that? Or
so Brandon, this is another thing. That's that entire process is drop shipping. So I don't even have to do that. So you can create fundraising. Like, I can, we'll talk off air and stuff,
Yeah.
and I'll definitely give you these guys' number. And
Yeah,
and
I would
you're
definitely
persistent,
call you
smart,
guys.
and you're capable. and
Anytime.
Yep.
So
Well, thank you.
yep. Brandon, good seeing you. Good talking to you. Good luck with everything. We'll definitely have you on to just come on and talk wrestling. So
Yeah.
anything else, guys? Otherwise, I'll let you go. See you guys.
Gotta go watch the Vikings game.
Oh,
Yeah,
hey, I
sure.
love the Vikings. That's my team.
Let's
Go
go. All
Vikings.
right, we got something interesting big time.
That's it, man.
All right,
Yeah.
go
All right.
Vikings.
All right.